This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 143 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I hope you're well. It's winter down here in Perth. We've finally got our few weeks of winter. I guess that's all we really get. So I have caught a cold off my son who caught it off, somewhere at school. So I've got my extra husky voice on today. Apologies. But winter is over in a flash here, so I'll be healthy again any second. Now, I've got a really special episode today. It's all about helpful or harmful travel. And I've got an extra special guest. So I'm interviewing today Jan Fran. Jan is an Aussie journalist and TV presenter. She hosts The Feed on SBS and has two podcasts, Sexism and the City and The Few Who Do. So you may have heard her there. If you're in Australia, you may have seen her on The Feed, or you might even have seen her on The Project on Channel 10. She's a regular guest host there. And to find out about how we can be more mindful travellers and have deeper and more authentic experiences, Jan Fran went overseas with adventure apparel brand Kathmandu, and the whole idea of the trip was to find out firsthand from the locals what's happening in our kind of travel hotspots and how we can do better. So Jan Fran, and together with Kathmandu, produced 3 videos called the Helpful or Harmful series, featuring Bali, Nepal, and parts of Australia. So I was pretty excited to get to interview Jan about these experiences, and honestly, I thought I had fangirled my way through the whole interview and only said dumb things, but on listening back, it sounds like I did better than I thought. So anyway, I'll let you be the judge, and here is the chat I had with Jan. You obviously had a really interesting time travelling so you're in Bali and in Nepal and in New South Wales to record these videos, the Harmful or Helpful series. But I'm curious to know what surprised you the most about these experiences. They're kind of Bali and New South Wales, fairly everyday places. Nepal, definitely not so everyday. But what was the most surprising things you discovered?
Not that I was surprised by the level of hospitality in both Bali and Nepal. And I knew that we were going to get, people who would be, of course, hospitable and very welcoming. But I think the level that we experienced in both those places of being actually welcomed into people's homes, having them cook for us, saying, yeah, you can just stay the night, stay here, in this room with us, wake up the next morning, have breakfast with us, got invited to go into a temple. And that footage that you see in that first episode there in Bali, it actually wasn't supposed to be filmed. That was just, we didn't even know that we were going to go into the temple. And they said, hey, do you want to pray with us this morning? Mm-hmm. And I thought, yeah,
take me.
Yeah, absolutely, And I said to the guys, I said, you know what, if you guys want to film, you can film, but I'm just going to go in there and just actually be as immersed as possible as I can in that experience. So I'm not going to give the camera anything. And they were like, all right, well, look, we're just going to roll and sort of see what happens. So that was brilliant. It felt like I just ignored them completely.
So it's properly authentic. It's really not made for TV. It was,
that one was properly authentic. Yeah. And so I was sort of, I guess the better way to describe it was taken aback by just how hospitable everybody was. And even in the monastery, which is, in the foothills of the Himalayas, this stunning place, we were treated like, and I almost wanted to say to the people, we're not that important. You can tell us to go away. You know this.
Well, yeah, that's my next question, because when I've been in a sort of a similar situation like that in the past, I feel kind of, it's a weird mix of amazingly comfortable because of the hospitality, but very uncomfortable because I'm not Queen of England or anything, I don't need to be treated in such this special way.
Exactly. And there's almost this, I had this sort of reflex kind of reaction to go, no, I'll wash up. No, it's fine. And of course they would never let you do that. We had the young monks in the monastery make us dinner, wash our plates, show us to our bedrooms and get all of the bedding there ready for us. They were just, so hospitable and so welcoming. They were what allowed us, I think, to have just that experience that I would never have had otherwise, and it was really great.
It's very special, isn't it? Look, it immediately makes me think, do you think it doesn't work in reverse? Do you think here in Australia we're not quite that hospitable?
No, I think we are. I think we are. I think we're hospitable in our own way. And I think if people were to kind of, and I always find this kind of traveling around Australia, no matter which town I go to or which community I travel to, there's always people who are ready to welcome you into the community. I can't deny that aspect of.
That's good. Yeah.
Even in cities, there's a level of hospitality among families and kind of community groups, and yeah.
No, you're probably right. It just looks a bit different, perhaps, and we're used to meeting lots of different people, and perhaps where you've been travelling there, they're not used to having visitors, especially foreign visitors. So it's a different scenario.
I think that's the other thing to bear in mind. And to be honest, I think they probably want to keep it to a regulated amount of tourists, I reckon. I don't know if they'd necessarily want tourists to be there every second of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
But they don't really get a lot of tourists in this place because it is so off the beaten track, and we sort it out, so we asked our guide. That was actually our guide's home village that we went
that's
to.
Right. Yeah.
So we were kind of deliberately seeking that out.
Yeah. But I think that all of us as travellers can do that. It takes extra effort, but it's not impossible, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And, that was kind of one of the things that I said in the Bali video that we made, that if there is a will, there is a way. If you want to get out of Kuta and Seminyak, and if you want to travel to other parts of Bali, I think you would find people who would be, ready to welcome you. It does take a little bit more effort, and it does take a bit more time, and sometimes it takes a little bit more sort of just logistical manoeuvring to actually get there. But if you wanted to do that and you were genuine about doing that, I think you'd find it reciprocated on the other side for sure.
Yeah. Oh, no, I absolutely agree with you. I think that there's always a way to find a more, it's an overused word, but a more authentic experience. And to really get out there and find people. But often I think you're right, it takes, more effort and more of this, but also more courage. I think a lot of people are a bit worried about that. So what would you say to the people who are kind of worried about getting out off the beaten track?
I would say don't worry. I would say as long as your intentions are clear, and as long as you've got an open mind and it sounds a bit cliche, but it's an open heart to all of the experiences that can happen.
Yeah.
You're only going to find good, even if things don't go your way, even if things might not fall into place the exact minute that you want them to fall into place. That is all part of what it means to actually get off the beaten track, And this is the type of stuff that you remember. I love Bali. I'm going to be the first to admit that I will spend the rest of my days in a plunge pool in a Balinese villa forever. This is true. But without a doubt, the thing that I remember the most about my trips to Bali is the time that we spent with that family in that house, hanging out in the temple. This is such a unique and very treasured experience, and I wouldn't have had it if we just decided to stay in the one place and kind of be comfortable. I think it's okay to feel a bit uncomfortable, crack that uncomfortability barrier, then you open yourself up to these new experiences that you just wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely right. And sometimes we feel, we go on holiday, we want to feel comfortable because we're trying to relax and have a break from work and all of that. But for me, always it's more than that. It's traveling is getting beyond that comfort zone and, learning more about myself and finding out about other people. And so but it's hard to balance that out sometimes. And there's people who are, I don't know, I just want to stay in my plunge pool because it's really nice in a plunge pool, isn't it? So, So it's just something to think more about. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that word, balance. And I don't blame someone for wanting to just go and hang out on a beach for a week and read a book. That's maybe what they need.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you don't have to do that all the time. Yeah. There can be a kind of balance you can strike.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think you can come home almost more refreshed in a way if you've had a bit of a balance of that, because you've also been inspired by meeting new people and seeing new ways of living. So
for sure. Yeah.
So what about, from what you learned on these trips, what kind of changes do you think that travellers can make to become more thoughtful travellers?
So there are a couple of things. For me, it was really thinking about my plastic water bottle usage because I've had it drilled into me. And look, in some cases, I think it is correct, but I've had it drilled into me that, you need to be very careful about the water quality in certain countries. So you want to make sure that you're always drinking, clean water out of a bottle, right? What that means is that you end up consuming a lot of plastic bottles, and then you end up kind of discarding them because you can't fill up from the taps locally. The one thing I discovered when I was there, which I'm ashamed to say I actually had not even heard of, was iodine tablets, which are supposed to purify the water. So what that means is, you can buy a bottle and then you can fill it up from taps, and then you just drop a couple of tablets in there, let it sit for a bit, and then the water's good to go. You can drink it just fine. The other thing was bringing your own water bottle, so whether that's a glass bottle or a traveller's, metal bottle, whatever it is, and just thinking about the ways that you would kind of store food. If there's a way to avoid plastic, like you have your own containers and you put, takeaway food in your own containers or sandwiches in your own containers. Really small things like that, I think, reduce the footprint a little bit.
Because that was really shocking, your video in Nepal of the mountains of, the mountain of rubbish, following the trail of rubbish up to Everest Base Camp. It never occurred to me that it would be like that, and it's so shocking.
Oh, that was the off-peak season.
Oh, wow.
That's when no one's there.
Wow. Yeah.
So you can only imagine and that town would swell up, significantly. You're talking 2-3 times, maybe 4 times the size,
It's crazy,
yeah. So and what the woman that I was speaking to, the thing that she mentioned was that the main culprit is plastic bottles.
Right. Yeah.
So if there was a way to kind of work out how to reduce that, I think that could be really helpful. The other thing is, and this is a really difficult one, but, flying pumps a lot of, carbon into the atmosphere or pumps a lot of kind of wastage into the atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
So what do? Stop traveling? It is
I
actually.
don't want to stop.
Well, yeah, people travel for all sorts of reasons. I don't think it's kind of a sustainable thing to say, okay, well, nobody flies anymore. But you can do things like offset your carbon emissions by, either donating through the airline to renewable causes or doing that yourself somehow, or, yeah,
there are ways, and just to actually recognise that it's an issue and try and do something about it is a big step.
Yeah, I think
if everybody did that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's still one of those things that's not really talked about all that much, but as the world gets more interconnected and flying becomes, a much more readily available thing. Arguably places like Australia, it is a readily available thing now.
Absolutely.
We do have to kind of talk about some of the impacts that does actually have environmentally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would kind of think about plastic usage being the big one, plastic water bottle usage, perhaps carbon offsetting, but also thinking a little bit about where your money goes and the businesses that you're investing in, because some businesses are actually, there's a lot of Australian-owned businesses in Bali.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you go to Bali and you buy from Australian-owned businesses, the money comes back to Australia.
Yeah. I can't remember the statistic, but I remember you speaking to someone in the Bali episode about that, and there was quite a shocking amount of money that wasn't going to stay in their community.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's got a terrible name. It's like something like travel leakage.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's the technical.
Right.
I think that's the technical term for it. It's
Yeah,
not a very pretty, doesn't conjure up a pretty mental image, but it's that idea of, you know, where your money actually ends up when you spend it in a particular economy. So, you know, having a think about where you're buying your stuff from, you know, who's making your leather bags, what kind of conditions they're working in and under, and, you know, where the money's going. And to do that, you have to do a bit of digging around. You have to ask a bit of questions. You have to maybe do a little bit more research. So it is a little bit more involved. You know, right? It does make the trip a little bit less carefree, but I think you only have to do it once to know,
exactly.
and then you know.
Yeah, and I think more and more people are aware of that kind of thing these days, and, you know, bloggers are posting things about it. It's becoming easier and easier to find information about, you know, really ethical companies and who owns what and that kind of thing. You're right, it still takes a bit of extra effort, but, yeah, I think certainly my audience would usually find that effort is worthwhile, because then you can feel, you know, you don't have a guilty conscience about where your money's going. You can feel, okay, I'm actually visiting this place and helping the local economy and helping these people. Then I feel better about that. So it's worth that effort.
Yeah, and look, you have to do it once. You know, you just do a solid hour of research once. You've got a couple of names of businesses. You find out a couple of things, and you can kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that research can unearth all sorts of really interesting stuff too. I've been just in Copenhagen for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to rent a bike with my son. And, you know, rather than just hop into the first bike rental shop, I thought, I'll just have a dig around and see. And I found a great social enterprise that works together with Mozambique. And so the money we spent on our bike rental also helps them ship bikes to Mozambique, where they're helping the locals to have this better so they can all get to work and all this stuff. And I thought, I feel so much better about that. And it took me 10 minutes or less to find that out. And, you know, now I feel like, you know, and I recommend them to everyone. And, you know, it's that kind of stuff that it just builds on itself. So once more people are aware and find things, and word of mouth spreads it all. And, it's worth that extra effort, I reckon.
Yeah, so do I.
Cool. Now, I was really taken by the part in your the Aussie episode about Airbnb and short-term vacation rentals and stuff.
Yeah.
About, you know, and I recognise that sometimes, I mean, I'm really torn about the issue of them really being, you know, sometimes really problematic to the local economy. I know in Japan they've stopped a lot of them, and also to, you know, the people if an apartment block has a lot of Airbnb rentals, they don't want people coming and going all the time, the security issues. I get that, but I love staying in those kind of places because I love to feel like a local. So it's a really, you know, I don't know what to do about it, but I mean, you know, from your experience and chatting to those people, do you have an idea of, you know, what's a good method to deal with this issue? Okay,
well, first of all, if you are staying in someone's house, don't trash it. That's a really good hot tip. Okay?
It seems like it should go without saying, but apparently not,
Yeah, it seems like exactly. I think with everything, there has to be a happy medium with Airbnb. And look, in places like Sydney, I don't think that the problem is critical. Certainly not in places like Barcelona, where you're seeing things like the rent being jacked up by landlords because they can make more money off short-term rentals. And so what that does is it pushes people out of the rental economy. They have to go further out of the city in order to access it.
Right.
That's a problem for locals, you know.
I don't want to cause that as a traveller. I don't want to cause that issue. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think it kind of just – I suppose it just comes down to just being aware of you know, who you're renting from, the kind of rating they have on Airbnb, who they've rented to in the past, doing a little bit of research about the area that rental exists in. Have there been problems in that area? Let me just turn this off.
Very popular.
You know, have there been problems in that area? Kind of just looking, whatever city you go to, just do a very cursory Google search, type in, you know, Barcelona Airbnb, New York Airbnb, see what comes up in the reporting, because that's just going to give you a bit of a clearer idea of the kind of the context that you're walking into, and it will help you make a better decision.
That's a very simple thing to do, but a very useful one just to start off. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And look, a lot of this has to be regulation. Like, a lot of this has to come from either Airbnb themselves or, you know, the local municipalities or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That kind of determine, okay, how many Airbnb rentals can exist in a city at what time, how many people can stay in one for how long, all of this kind of stuff. But I think in terms of what people can do as travelers, just be as informed as possible about where you're going and you know who else is involved in that process.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, that makes an awful lot of sense. It sounds like something I should have thought of before, but I don't usually do that before I travel. But it's such a straightforward thing. I've heard about Barcelona. I know in Japan there's issues, but before I booked to go to Denmark, I didn't even look that up, and I should have. And I think it's not a problem there, so it's okay. But it's a simple thing to check first. I agree. Great idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And look, sometimes you won't have a choice. I mean, if you want to go to Denmark and you want to stay in a particular area, then if there's a problem there, sometimes you might have to go, well, there's nothing else I can do about this other than be a thoughtful, decent person and not trash the home. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it just comes down to like doing a bit of research first and being thoughtful. All of this stuff, really. Just be a bit informed and be decent, and you're halfway there. So
that's right.
Yeah. Now, I've got one more thing I want to ask you about, which really touched me in the episode you did about Nepal, about the whole cultural exchange thing. So I've often felt when I go somewhere that I'm the one who's getting all the experiences. I'm learning what it's like in their culture, and I kind of feel guilty that I don't think I have much to give back, and like maybe we're financially supporting them or whatever, but I don't feel like. But there was a bit in your video where the crew was showing some of the local people how to use the drone, and it was kind of tagged as kind of a it's a kind of a bit of a cultural exchange. So have you got some more thoughts on that?
Well, I just love that moment so much because, I mean, visually it's quite stunning as well, because we're actually in a monastery in Nepal and we're showing the monks who are in, they're wearing the robes. And this is the crew that I was traveling with, sort of showing the monks how to kind of use a drone. And there's all these young monks who were there who were just really interested and wanting to know more about this. They were more interested in it than I was. I got to a point where I'm like, it's too cold, I'm going inside. But it was this really wonderful kind of moment of like, well, you've brought so much, to us, and hopefully we can kind of give something back to you. And whether that is just, our eternal gratitude or, these sort of just little moments and little tidbits that you can have where you say, hey, this is what we do. Come and check it out. Or, come and be a part of it. I thought it was a really lovely moment.
I loved it. Yeah. How do you do it? How do you create this stuff? How that was just a spontaneous kind of thing, I guess, or
you absolutely don't create it. It was the our drone operator Ben. He was getting ready to kind of fly the drone over the monastery, and the monks started gathering around the drone, and then one of our producers says, "We should film this." Because this is what we're talking about. We should film this moment. And so someone just buttoned on, and that's kind of what happened. We absolutely could not have planned for that in a million years.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of capturing, what sort of happens naturally.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, it gave me kind of hope to think, there's always something that we can give back in a different way.
I think
beyond just our, financial contributions or, things like that. There's probably more than we think of. It probably just pays to be a bit creative about, what you could be giving back.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. No, it was just a beautiful moment. I loved it. So, yeah. Awesome. I just, if we've got time, I do want to, we've got a couple of minutes, I do want to just quickly check about the whole Bali thing. So I find my only visit to Bali was really cringy because there was a lot of, drunken Aussies there being pretty disrespectful, and I found it really hard. But, how can we fix that? Sorry, I've asked you a very big question, but what's your thoughts?
Look, I don't know if we can fix that, to be honest, because I think that you'll find it's usually sort of young Australians who want to go out on the town and who want to have this particular experience, right? And look, that is one element of Bali. It's just one element. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to fix it, I would suggest don't be a part of it.
Yeah.
Go Go to another part of the island that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Go to another part of the island that has a completely different vibe and setting. Go to another part of the island where you can do a whole bunch of different things that, you know, rather than go to the bars and nightclubs and whatever it is. If that's not your vibe, it's okay. You don't have to be a part of it. But I don't know if you can tell people who are on a, you know, group bucks night to Bali not to get drunk. You know, they're going to do it, and you hope that they behave in at least a manner that is socially acceptable. But, you know, if you don't want to be a part of that, you don't have to, because Bali offers up so much more. And this is something that I really want to get out to people, because I think Bali has a bit of a reputation of being a place of, you know, beers and bintang singlets and bars and drinking. And yes, there is that element to Bali, but I think that there is so much more. Like, it is such wonderful. I will spruik Bali for as long as I should be the ambassador to Bali.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I really should, because I love it, and I think it's such a wonderful place that has so many different elements. So you can choose which elements of Bali.
You're dead right. And what I also got out of your interviewing the local people there was that the people who are, you know, working in those areas, you know, they need the Aussies to come and buy their drinks and stuff. Like, that's a really important part of the economy. So, and to see that, you know, they were 100% enthusiastic and you couldn't get them to say, oh, no, it's a problem, then I guess, you know, maybe that's just the way it is. And you're right, we can't change it. And I know that there's a lot more to Bali than that. So, maybe that's the way to think about it.
The majority of Aussies are great over in Bali. And the locals will tell you that. Like, the majority are fun, friendly, they're helpful, they want to support the local economy, they're just out there to have a good time and kind of mind their own business. You know? Yeah. So
yeah. So it's not as bad as I think.
No, not as bad as you think.
You're quite right. Okay, I feel a bit reassured. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You're welcome.
Excellent. All right. Well, where's your next trip, and how are you going to be a thoughtful traveller on your next trip?
Ooh, where is my next trip? You know, I want to go back to Lebanon. I was in Lebanon just recently in December of last year, and I was. If I tell you how many water bottles I drank and discarded, I feel really bad about that. I'm hoping to get to Lebanon again some point in the latter half of this year. Wonderful. And that's something that I'm going to be a lot more conscious about, definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Whether that'll happen or not remains to be seen, but I'm scheming.
Excellent. It's always good to have a scheme. I've come back and I actually have no trips booked at the moment, which is the first time in I can't remember how long that I've had that situation. Okay. I find it really difficult to think, oh, my God, I've got no flights. How am I going to do it?
You should go to Bali. Well, you live in Perth. It's closer to get to Bali than it is to get to anywhere else.
It really is. It's closer even than Adelaide. So
yeah, I know.
Maybe it'll inspire me. Yeah. That's a great idea. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jan. It's been awesome to be able to chat to you today, and I look forward to following some of your future travels and other work as well.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much for chatting to me. It was lovely.
Well, the big message I got out of chatting with Jan was it helps if you do a bit of research, and it helps if you act like a basic, decent human being. And if we do those things, then we're well on the way to being pretty thoughtful travellers. And I think most of you listening are pretty good at doing that already. I have to say, I'm not always good at researching. I'm getting better for sure. And that's something I did a lot more of before my last trip, and something I want to do more of in the future. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to episode 143 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. If you're curious, I'd highly recommend going to watch the helpful or harmful videos that Jan made. There's a link in the show notes, or if you just search in YouTube, you'll find them, or they're at kathmandu.com.au/helpful or harmful with dashes between the words. They're really, just short-ish videos, but really are really, really worthwhile to see, and thought-provoking as well. At that link, there's also a research report about the whole helpful or harmful thing, which I found made for very interesting reading. So a huge thank you to Jan Fran for making time in her very busy schedule to chat with me. It was a great pleasure. So thanks, Jan. And you can find out more about Jan at her website, janfran.net. Now, I'm very curious to hear what you think about being a helpful or a harmful traveller and what else we can do to be helpful travellers. So come along to our Facebook group and have a chat about it. It's called Thoughtful Travellers if you haven't joined yet. We're nearly hitting 600 people. By the time this comes out, I reckon we'll be over 600, which is a great group of like-minded, awesome people. So come and tell us what you think about helpful or harmful travel. Either just search for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook or go to the link in the show notes. And the show notes for this episode are at notaballerina.com/143. Thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.